Hey, welcome back. Lesson 6. So, class, status, and beliefs. We are knocking 3 out of the park today. So, making sure again at the top of the contents page of your booklet, you are highlighting and dating this lesson. First one we're going to start off with this lesson is class, or sometimes referred to as social class. So, if you do want to chuck the word social up above here, feel free to do so. But class is a system where societies are organized into hierarchy levels based on power, privilege, and wealth. So if you guys always see the typical triangle, I'll get one up, hold on. So I've just done a quick Google search. So social hierarchies, you see this pyramid, here's an ancient Egyptian social hierarchy period. And I guess that's the one that's most commonly used. But the idea here is that certain people in society have different classes. So a modern day one, I'll look up a modern day one. It's typically represented something like this, the upper, middle, and lower class, which is typically what we're going to look at now. So it's shifted a bit over time. Typically, as the pyramid peaks up the top, there are fewer people at the top, and that most people sit at the bottom. That's the theory. In actuality, it's a lot more nuanced and complicated than that. But the general principle is that in modern society, at least, it's based on these three things: power, privilege, and wealth. So power being the amount of power that you can exercise. Remember, that's your right or ability to persuade others into doing things that they wouldn't normally do. And that power is very much connected to privilege and wealth. So wealth obviously being financial status, how much money you earn typically means you have more power in Western society because you can afford to do certain things that other people cannot. And the idea of privilege, this is the concept that this is an advantage available to a specific group. I want you to write that here. So privilege means you have an advantage that is available to you because you belong to a particular group in society. Right, that's somewhere around here. And that's important to know because the power that stems from money, I think, is obvious, but the power that stems from privilege is not so obvious. So typically you've probably heard concepts such as white privilege, male privilege, and typically what that is referring to is that in Western culture, and again there's a lot of research behind this, typically males are more privileged than other genders, and that white people are typically, in Western culture, more privileged than other ethnicities. And I mean, it stands to truth and reason that is definitely the case. You can see examples of that throughout history, and even today, as progressive and as far as we've come, there's still that social inequity that is very clear, and that's based on that social hierarchy of a class system that we still have. Class systems, therefore, they're typically determined by the access to economic resources that you have, and in turn, that shapes aspirations, behaviours, and life chances. So, again, science shows typically the more well off you are in a money sense, the higher your life chances are in terms of life expectancy, job, money. Not happiness, though. Happiness is a different metric, but another lesson for another time. However, in contemporary societies, we can see that class can be quite fluid. Now, what we mean by fluid is that, if you want to draw an arrow here, is that it's constantly changing, and just trying to think how to describe this. It doesn't have a fixed state. So it's always changing, and it doesn't have a fixed state. So fluid, like water, can change forms, right? It could be ice, it could be steam, it could be water itself. So similar social class in contemporary society can be changing and quite fluid. It can change forms almost. No fixed shape. So for example, through education and hard work, you can reach or aspire to a new class. I mean, there's tons of examples of famous people that were literally, whoops, I think I stuffed my thing there. Lots of famous people like, so Oprah Winfrey's one, Jim Carrey's one. You can look up their story if you want. Trevor Noah, you guys have heard of him. He's got a great book. He started in London, South Africa, and now he's a the giant talk show host in America. So a lot of people, so like in contemporary society, that's where class can be quite fluid. So typically, if I use Trevor Noah as an example, this is Trevor Noah, by the way, in case no one knows who Trevor Noah is that typically in a Western society, obviously his ethnicity is from another country, he's South African, he's got darker skin. Typically in the Western society, he doesn't fit the mold of being that white, born in privilege person. He was actually, again, just because I've read his book, he was born in South Africa. And growing up, he used to just hustle on the streets for money, ripping off music tapes, burning them onto CDs and then selling them. That's how he used to make his living. And then somehow he's become one of the most well-known, well, not somehow, read the book if you want to find out how, has become one of the most well-known American talk show hosts and is worth quite a bit of money. So that's where social class can be fluid. But I think that's sort of the exception to the rule in some cases, because we still have a lot of really entrenched inequity within our class system, and that's important to point that out. But likewise, you can lose your social standing just as easy. So some people, and you can look at the stats here, a lot of people who win the lotto, their life is fairly normal, comfortable, they're just your everyday person. They win the lotto and they get depressed and go bankrupt. And it's an insane statistic. Or even other people who get exposed online or cancelled, so you can lose your social status super quickly. So it can take a long time to build. And usually in traditional society, there was less chance that you could topple as quick. But now, in contemporary society, it's very fluid. You could be in 1 week and the next week you're out. So with that in mind, I've got an activity here I'd like you to do. So I want you to rank the following factors in this table on this side with the yellow here into what you think has highest status in your personal micro world. So this is very much about your personal beliefs. I want you to highlight which has the highest status, and then give me your top 3 there. So there's how many here? 1, 2, 3. Oh god. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 12 things here. So I want you to give a ranking of 1 to 12 on what's the most important to you and what's the least important to you in terms of what you think gives you the highest status. And that's according to your, personal beliefs in your micro world. So this is almost like, what do you and your family and close friends sort of value? And then write your top 3 here. And then I want you to do the same, but think about at a macro world level. So what do you think society ranks as the highest here? Okay, do you think they rate where you live and where you came from as the most important thing? Do you think they value intelligence the most? Whatever it is, I want you to then do that and write the top 3, and then want you to compare the two and note the differences between what you personally believe at your micro level lens, or what your family might, versus the macro level. Alrighty, that's class. Do that and then pause me, and then we'll get back to lesson 8. Lesson 6, sorry. So we're going to look at status now. So status is it's closely related to class. You might see the terms class and status thrown around a bit. I guess class is something that a lot of people are typically born into, whereas status is something that can really be shaped and molded by social expectations. So it's a little bit of a nuanced difference. So status is a measure used to compare people or groups based on criteria or social expectations, and it's almost always determined by the esteem or approval of others. So typically someone only gets high social status because the group or a group of people believe them to be important, and that's based on social expectations or criteria that they meet, which are always socially constructed. So for above criteria, can we write socially constructed, because they are. And whether you keep that high status or low status is often determined by the esteem or approval of everyone else. And this happens at a micro, meso, and macro level. So you could have super high status in your meso world with your peer group, say at school, but then when you move to the workplace, you might have a low social status because you're just washing the dishes or flipping the burgers. You know what I mean? So you can have different statuses in different areas of your life. The second part to look at is that a signifier for status in our culture, being Western culture, is occupation. So I guess segueing into workplace, if you're ever, it might not be happening to you so much now, but when you get older, people will often introduce themselves and then indicate their profession or occupation because it defines their place in the world and it gives them a context for their identity and provides them with a sense of purpose or belonging. So typically, like when I meet someone new for the first time, it's, oh, hey, I'm Rob, and they always ask that question, what do you do? And it's like, oh, I'm a teacher at Woy Woy High School. And then I ask them, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I'm a physiotherapist and this and that. So one of the first questions we sort of identify as social beings to see the status of other people, because what we want to do is assume, I guess, whether they're at the same level as us. It's sort of this like complex, deep human behavior where you typically hang out with people who are like you or sort of on a similar level with you. Like, do any of you guys, I guess, hang out with Ed Sheeran on a weekend or Harry Styles? Probably not, because their social status, they're just in a completely different planet to we are. And likewise, we're going to hang out with people who have similar social status than us, because if you have a group, and we'll learn about this more in Nature Nurture, if you have a group of people and one is significantly higher social status than another, it creates this kind of like power imbalance, and people start behaving differently towards them because of this socially constructed criteria that we need to be liked by people who are similar to us and hang out with people who are similar to us. It's a very niche and complex cultural phenomenon that we have in our culture. Another example of this, and again, I'm just talking typically here, I'm sure that, you know, if anyone's an Ed Sheeran fan and I've insulted you, he does seem like a humble dude that still hangs with his school friends every now and then, but it's just still not the same for him. Another example of this is, again, typically a garbage collector in society would hold low social status compared to the high social status of a doctor. So that's similar to, like I was saying earlier, within your meso world, you can be high social status in one area and low in another. So in one social context, for example, you guys might typically be the life of a party because you're comfortable with the social status and the people that you're surrounded with. But in another circumstance or place, you might be very introverted because your social status is lower, you don't know people there quite as well. Or similarly, it might be too high and you feel like, you know, these people are way out of my league because of the socially constructed differences that are influencing your behavior. So that's status. Very closely linked to class. Rightio, we're going to finish on beliefs now. So beliefs, again, this is a lot of the time when we look at socialization, beliefs, people think straight to religion. And I think the reason because of that is because it has had such a profound effect on society. So whether you are religious or not, you can't deny the fact that in human history, the influence of religion has been dramatic at a global scale. Most societies have a declared, or most countries still today and throughout time have sort of a declared state religion. That religion over time has influenced our laws and things like that. So it has played a very big part, but it's not just about religion either. Beliefs such as feminism, veganism, capitalism, all of these theories that we have are also beliefs, and it can shape our socialization process too. But the way I guess we'll start with religion is that it's had a profound effect on society because it defines behavior. It's sort of said what's right and wrong right from sort of the get-go when humans were first starting to think and use their brains. So the capacity of religion to shape and influence culture is globalized and can be witnessed everywhere in the world from any era. So for example, if we look at our own country, the dreaming of Aboriginal culture is a belief system that existed and has ethereal, otherworldly experiences attached to it, like Bayami for the creator. You've also got stories of the rainbow serpent and how they changed and shaped the world. You've got Tiddalik the frog and how the story about how to not be greedy came from there. In other parts, we've got Hinduism stemming from India, Christianity in sort of the typical Western European, Middle Eastern world, and then also Islam came from the Middle Eastern part of the world as well. And there are plenty of others. You've got things like Buddhism driving it, Taoism, which is looking at this, which is the foundation for the concept of yin and yang and keeping balance with things, such as is balanced in nature. So anywhere in the world you look, anywhere you go, from Aztecs and Mayans in the Americas, there's always been elements of religion and beliefs which has formed the basis of law and fundamental human rights that we see today. So this concept of love thy neighbour shapes beliefs and attitudes about behaviour. But it's not just about that, like the concept in the Christian faith of the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not murder, steal, cheat on their spouse, all of those sorts of things. That's shaped our laws and order and justice. And similarly, this concept of yin and yang, which we have here, has shaped a lot of social ideas around environmentalism and harmony. Buddhism has shaped a lot of ideas surrounding peace and conflict within the world. So religion has shaped a lot of beliefs, but then beliefs in themselves. So things like feminism has radically shifted the way that Western society views women over time, and is still doing that to this day. So the idea that beliefs shape our socialization process quite profoundly is a very true assumption. Anyway, that's it for this lesson. Thanks so much.